time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
With Barnet Bain. Good moment, everyone.
Before we get going, we want to give a quick thanks to our sponsors, the folks at Hierophant Publishing, Inside Events USA, and Hampton Roads Publishing. They make this show possible, and of course, we love them for that. We love their work.
We hope you'll love them too. They deserve our love.
Lots of love there going on. Feeling the love today.
We are feeling the love today.
We're feeling the pressure today.
Nah, we roll with that.
Well, you're getting good at this, Barnet. You've got a whole mountain of stuff you're navigating these days.
A lot of stuff coming at me, but all good stuff. All really, really good stuff. And things that I put out some of them years ago. I'm always reminded, I'm always humbled to remember that the present is always a reflection of the past. It's always an echo. I'm always trying to relate to an echo. And that can be confusing. It's tempting sometimes to react to an echo. But we live in time, so the things that we put out, they come back, and there's a gap between what it is that I want and hope and desire and what is. And suddenly things that were put out at a different point in time, they all kind of come home in their own cadence, and sometimes, as is happening for me right now, it's all at once.
Well, so we live in time and space, which of course is linear, but the paradox is that all of this is not linear. Consciousness is not linear. So
it's not.
So we have this relationship with our lives where we see it sequentially, but of course the energy of, let's call it the universe, it doesn't really operate in sequence, you know?
We process all data through our cortex. So,
right.
We don't have to, but we're conditioned. We're trained to do that. So we create something nonlinear, and we fall in love with the straight line because it is processed. We over-identify with the story-making rationale part of our mind. But if we become more in tuned to the visceral part of our nature, the whole limbic part of our nature, that is very comfortable in a non-storied world, and that's a different experience. And I think that is at least a part of the function of what we speak about on this show, this movement from one way of being relational with reality to an entirely different, emergent, new way of being intimate with reality. That's certainly a piece of it.
Big time. Who do we got today?
Well, we have somebody that can speak deeply to this. Do you want to guess who that could be?
I know who it is.
You do know who it is. Who told you? You're reading your notes. We have our really dear friend Lisa Gar, and those of you who are longtime listeners to this show know that she's a dear friend, and you're also aware of her show. She's the
very
host,
aware,
very, very aware. She's the host of the Aware Show.
That's right. And
she's also the author of Being Aware, and we are aware that becoming aware, rather, and we are aware that how grateful we are to have her with us on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Hey,
this
Lisa,
morning.
welcome to the show.
Hi. Well, you would think that I am the most aware person on the planet, but that is not the case.
You're pretty aware.
You're pretty
aware.
That's why I wrote a book about it.
You're aware.
We all teach what we most log to. I finished my book and I read it and I thought, wow, this is good stuff. It made me feel good.
Right.
I thought, well, I should practice. I should learn about this stuff.
I did the same thing. I was like, I really like this book. Yeah, but I think I've become aware of how many times that I wasn't aware,
yes.
So I wrote a book about it.
Yes. Well, this is actually where I was going to head, is that, look, one of the things to be aware of is how easily we get distracted.
Yeah.
Yes, especially with our monkey minds and
Squirrel.
ADD and everything else that allows us to be creative.
Yeah. So what you just said, which is really great, is what allows us to be creative and harnessing that in a way that's constructive, right? So we love paradox in this show. We love how things kind of operate in this almost seemingly going the opposite way sort of direction. And if we can kind of weave them together, life becomes more functional.
Yes, and if we stop judging ourselves in the meantime, then we're golden.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
That judging ourselves piece, boy, that is a piece.
Yeah.
You know, it's you know how sometimes you just have out of nowhere you get these kinds of moments of clarity. They just sort of ping in and suddenly, I understand something. It's not always an abiding understanding. Sometimes it disappears like the morning dew in 10 minutes.
Yes.
But I suddenly had this awareness, and it's still with me, although I don't always lean into it, that every interruption that I have, every single one, is a voice of the past, is a voice of some earlier hurt. So every judgment, every single judgment, it has nothing to do with the present moment.
Wow. And
never has anything to do with the present.
That's a beautiful realization. And then that is a perfect example of what I say in terms of awareness is 80% of the solution. Because if you can really take that nugget right there and realize every mental interruption is a moment from the past and catch it and say, okay, that's my past talking. How can I be present? How can I move into the future with grace and ease? And that's where you start to make that that's the transformational moment. That's that pivotal moment. In that moment of awareness, you catch yourself. And that's what, that's why I didn't write the book title, I Am Aware, because it is a process. It is a daily, moment-to-moment process of becoming aware in the tiny moments. And that's what I live for and have always been insatiably curious to discover about myself and about other people, and why I've interviewed 3,500 people, because I just can't get enough of that question.
It's an aspiration, right? So there's enough of an experience in your life, but I'll talk for myself, in my life, where the upside of being present and being in flow is enough. And there's enough recognition that my life is more fulfilling when I'm really attuned and present versus living out of this story from the past, thrown forward to what I'm trying to, be based on what I've been told I ought to be, right? That there's a recognition that ain't going to work. And then the shift becomes the aspiration, because it's not like we're going to do it just because we recognize that it's a good idea.
Right, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it becomes an aspiration, and in moments we find ourselves in those flow, and we're like, wow, I'm doing it. And then, of course, we're not in it, because the moment we start thinking about it, we're out of the game.
Yes.
But it is an aspiration, right?
Oh, yes, it is. And that's what makes it fun, is because this is something, the brain loves to achieve. And this is one thing that I really learned when I went through my healing process. I had a traumatic brain injury from a very severe accident, damaged my right prefrontal cortex severely. And I discovered the damage through an EEG neurofeedback scan that I had, where they, plug your head up to the electrodes, and the electrodes connect to the computer, and the program sends a signal to the brain, and the brain sends a signal back if it's healthy. Well, the fine-tuning was there were 3 cortexes in my brain that were not sending signals back. And it was a process of awakening those cortexes of my brain moment by moment, one by one. And it took years. And it's not a one-time fix-it-all type of situation either. You don't fix the brain and then it's fine. The brain is this beautiful thing, but it likes to go back to its state of zero every now, when it was damaged, when you have damaged brain, and it likes to go back to that dormant state. It takes constant exercise, I call them brain gymnastics, to keep your brain and your mind activated and remember you're moving forward. So, and when you said that, when I said the brain goes after rewards, it was this program, it was this brain game that I was playing with monitor, and I would have this little teeny square of a hot air balloon picture appear on the monitor, and we all know that classic picture of the hot air balloon with the blue sky in the background, and the brain wants to see the picture. And the only way that it would is if my brain would send a signal to the program that was slightly higher than the signal that was sent to my brain. And it would play this game. And if it would send back that slightly higher frequency, then another little teeny 1-inch square would appear on the monitor. And then the computer would send me back a signal saying, verified, got it, here's the next signal up. If my brain responds, another one appears. But if I defocus or get diffused or go back to sleep, dormancy, or even go into a negative thought pattern, the whole thing goes black. And that was what I did for 2 years to rebuild that cortex of my brain. But it shows in life, the brain desires that forward-moving achievement state. And when it doesn't get it, it experiences a lack of reward, or in a way, a failure. And it's really interesting the way that the brain does that. And I'm not saying we all need to be hyper-successful megalomaniacs. I'm talking about the minute level here, the very minute level of little tiny successes perpetuate more of the same. And that could be a hello, that could be a hug, that could be a conscious, really connected conversation. It could be accomplishing a major goal. That's the flood of it. But that's what I've learned in this process of reawakening my brain, was really understanding that change is absolutely possible. And no matter what state you're in or have come from, it's the little tiny steps of, I find it, in conscious, connected conversations. I know you guys do the same, but that's what creativity is for me. And I know, Barnett, you speak so beautifully about that. That's what it is for me. It's those little sparks, moment to moment. They could be tiny or they could be immense, but it's what the brain desires. It craves it, and it wants more of the same when it gets it.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, it's like the brain has set points.
Yes.
And it is comfortable in these set points. Mm-hmm. And it's not simply conceptual that we're talking about here. It's physiological. Our brain, the axons and dendrites of our neuronal structure, they map together, they fire and they wire together in particular neuronal structure systems. And so we are, the actual physiology of our brains are designed to constantly reinforce its set point, and to choose something else requires an act of will and an act of willingness, and then the brain begins to rewire in unfamiliar patterns. It begins to develop something that is absolutely virgin territory, and with attention and focus, we begin to wire and to strengthen new brain patterns, new neuronal systems, and with lack of attention, the old ones they literally split apart. And we can become new. There are whole sciences now that are devoted to that. Once upon a time, it was believed that cradle to grave, you played the cards that were dealt you, and now there's these whole areas of science called neuroplasticity and all its associated fields that is just about this, that the brain is an ongoing organ, an organism, and we can become brand new. And is indeed what the transformational act, we know intuitively that we are becoming brand new, and our brains are living maps of the transition.
So it gets us also out of that place of judgment, because when you realize, the same thing happens for what I was talking about in terms of a forward-moving position. The same thing happens if you get into that negative space where the negative hormones and chemicals, neurotransmitters, start to release as well, perpetuating more of the same. That's why you get into that spiraling negative thinking space when you start it. And I have literally retrained on a conscious level how to stop that, because I know how powerful it is. You know when somebody gets angry and then they get more angry and more and more and more angry, and then they get unreasonably angry?
Yeah.
Well, that's that total just pouring of neurotransmitters that are perpetuating more of the same negative neurotransmitter. And that it can be stopped. If you can stop it at the beginning, it's like stopping the waterfall with the dam right at the beginning. You don't start the flow, then it will not get worse. So you can literally train yourself. The first negative thought you have, you can switch it. You can switch it by slamming yourself into present time and then finding some random fake it till you make it positive phrase that you want to just say to yourself to upset the chemical release and to break the pattern and to find a new chemical. It's literally what the brain does. So the other day I was in the car and my preteen daughter said something totally unrealistic, which is what preteens do, and had a fit in a tantrum about something. And instead of me going into the pattern that I was raised with, I recognized the pattern. I recognized the feeling. I felt the chemicals start to release. I've gotten this attuned to it. And then I just said, life is beautiful. And I said, I love you so much. And this is going to be the best day ever. As we drove out the driveway.
When she said, I know this girl, so she's a wonderful girl. She said, Mom!
I don't want to go to no.
Exactly.
She's an amazing goalie, and she's a little burnt out on it, and long story. But anyway, she was going to her final practice, and she blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I was able to, and then guess what? She had a fantastic practice, great day. She's all re-inspired now because she's really got, a good thing going there. But I'm not going to do it for her. She's got to create it in her own self to have the will to want to complete something, to finish something.
So I love what you're saying, and I think there's a little tripcord here.
Okay.
What I think people are looking for often when they turn to people like you or me or Barnett or anyone in our sort of space is they're looking for a fix or they're looking for a formula.
You got a good point, yes.
And what I love about what you're saying is the tools in the moment to respond, yeah?
Yeah.
Not formulaic, not repeated, because part of what we're wanting to interrupt is the tendency towards patterning, the tendency towards repetition, and the space wherein there's creative response to whatever's showing up in our experience is an act of consciousness. It's something that we develop. And then tools are fantastic. I mean, it's awesome to have tools, but, we don't want to rely on one single tool because it's too formulaic and it will stop working. I mean, it's the law of diminishing return, right? So the broader, let's call it context, right, of wanting to be aware, wanting to have, what is the quality and experience that I'm looking to navigate in relationship with my daughter? And then moment to moment, how do I respond? Thank God you've got the tools. But for me, I think we have to be careful with the tools. I think it's too easy in our space to get into formulas, 7 steps, 3 tricks.
Oh my gosh, I've been asked that so many times on this book tour. What are the 5 steps to becoming aware?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, yeah. Well, we could give you 5 steps, but there's probably 5,000 more if we really want to explore. The context is...
The 5 ones today?
Yeah.
But I think it's sort of developmental. So it's a paradox because people need, you're learning how to play an instrument. So you take lessons and you get the 5 steps, how to blow your trumpet and how to work your armature. And there are steps, there is technique, and you learn, and eventually you become masterful. And once you learn, it becomes embodied, and then you can step beyond it. And now,
but I'll tell you, with kids, they see through it, Barnett.
It's not even about seeing. The way I'm holding it.
Yeah.
The way I'm holding it. Even with kids, you give them a training in gymnastics and they learn how to do something. And then eventually, all I'm saying is that eventually it becomes so embodied that people can go off book. And then something lifts. But sometimes, certainly in the consciousness space, in the personal growth space, and sometimes people they have agendas about it that are hidden agendas, under the table expectations, and things that they haven't admitted to themselves about what motivates them. And until those can become recognized, until somebody is really understanding the sort of the various psychologies that are operating. And that's what the 7 steps is helpful to. These things help you to understand the basic psychologies. And then beyond that, it becomes easier to make the kinds of shifts that we're talking
But
about.
I want to track back to this precise story. I agree with you, Barnett, but this precise story about the teenage or the preteen, because I'm living that, Lisa, is that, my kids are really aware when I'm pulling one of my little, one of my little tools, like it's not that.
Oh yeah, they smell that.
Yeah, they can smell it. Well, so can my wife. She's like, don't life coach me now, Freeman.
Yeah.
So,
awesome.
So what I'm saying, and this is really just me relaying my own experience right now in the present, is that
don't school me.
Yeah, and don't. There aren't the three steps aren't that interesting. Past the first 3 times you use it. After that, it becomes like, oh, we're going to pattern around this. There has to be a bigger context. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I think awareness is, by the way, Lisa. I think awareness as a bigger context is great, and have tools is fine, but it's a much bigger conversation than here are the 5 steps.
It is, and it also changes. You said it. There's 50 different steps, so which 5 steps can apply today? And it's never going to start with number 1 through 5. It's going to, maybe you're at number 15 today, and there's 5 steps there to get you to the next level. And yeah, that's true. I mean, we could do a whole show on conscious parenting, and you have.
Let's do it.
You have.
We'll book it. We'll do another one.
That's right.
Let's do it.
Well, get the kids in the room and really make it crazy.
Exactly.
God, that would be so golden. Yes.
Let's do it. But there are so many moving parts to this. It's because I think we used to talk about the dynamic complexity of things. There are so many moving parts, and together they create a whole greater than the sum of the parts. But you come forward with we come forward with our kids, and out of who we are, out of who we're being, out of this sort of culminating energies, the whole martini of everything that we are, we have a certain vibe. We are a certain mood to them.
Yes.
They experience us as a quality of energy, and that energy is a container, and it is it has more impact beyond the modeling, because the modeling
that still gets too rigid.
The modeling flops left and right depending on
I'm
what
doing
we're reacting.
my conscious modeling for my kids.
Exactly.
Right? Get over it.
But they understand who you are.
That's right.
And
they read right through that.
Inside the space of who you are, they grow. Everybody is impacted, whether it's your kids or your colleagues, your spouse, your coworkers. They respond to you out of the energetic frequency that you are.
And they get it the most when they see you put to task, or when they push you. And they really want to test to see if you are who you say you are.
That's their job.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And which is really interesting. I had just a little bit of a switch of a topic. Last night I had an interview about my book with a radio show called Darkness Radio. And because I'm a weekend host on Coast to Coast, the guy that interviewed me is also another weekend host, and he wanted me on his show. But it was a show that they usually talk about ghosts and paranormal and conspiracy and so forth. And we had the best conversation, because this conversation about awareness can permeate everything. It can go into the most sublime. It can go into the darkest place. It could go into parenting. It can go into every single conversation, because every single organism becomes aware at a certain point in its lifespan. And plants, animals, kids, even darkest exploration, whatever it is, it has that glimpse, that tiny, momentary glimpse of awareness in order to get to its next stage of evolution.
Well, and it's always being discovered, right? Because awareness, we go back to the beginning of the conversation, which is that I'm aware how much I'm repeating the past, how much the echo in my life is what I'm calling my life. Awareness is an invitation to something yet undiscovered. That's the bigger conversation where, and just in this specific example where you're hosting a show that has a certain, or you're on a show that has a certain theme, and you go off map, right? You go off map.
Yes.
And everyone goes, wow, how cool was that? So again, I'm not to say that, when a show has a theme, we oughtn't to, I don't know if we ought to or oughtn't to, but the idea that you kind of stick with a theme, I get it. But how much space do we have? How much space, because awareness is about space, do we have to wander? How much space do we have to organically allow a moment to unfold in front of us? That's where life gets juicy.
Yes, and also not always preach to the choir. And that's one of my purposes and journeys that I came into this life with. And one of the things that came very clearly to me during that near-death experience I had was really and you're on the same journey and the same train with me, is to up-level the consciousness of humanity through media. And this is truly what we're here to do, and we're all in this conscious collective to do this. So my point is to break out of just this same community of conscious communicators and move into darkness radio, or move into coast to coast, or move into other segments of the population and reawaken awareness within them. And that's what organically happened when I started this radio show. I started my radio show 15 years ago because I was so curious about this conversation and this experience that I had when I went to this place of pure expanded consciousness when I was unconscious, for probably the most conscious I'd ever been in that near-death experience. And I really, when I came to, and several months later as I was trying to discover what happened, it was emerging. This conversation was emerging out of me. And so I started a radio show just having these conversations because it was so interesting to me on a mainstream radio station here in Los Angeles, mostly left-wing.
You can say the name.
Oh, yeah, KPFK, mostly political radio format. And then in the middle of the afternoon, they put on spirituality programming. And it usually existed from 12 p.m. to, 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. type of thing. But this brought it up, and it brought it into Los Angeles radio in the middle of the day, and the conversation awakened within people. And KPFK doesn't do any marketing or commercials or anything, so it really had to reach the level of awakening in people in order for it to perpetuate itself. And it has, and is one of the number one shows on the station now, because this conversation applies to everyone. And that's one of my goals on this planet, is to keep going beyond these juicy conversations with our wonderful conscious collective community, but to reawaken the consciousness in everyone.
I'll tell you what I'm aware of. We blew through a commercial. Oh, well, keep going. Barnett, you were going to say something?
I want to thank all of our very, very generous.
That's right. For those of you dying for a commercial break,
I want to thank all our very, very generous sponsors, and we promise that next time we'll sell more cars.
That's right.
So we appreciate you all. We love you all, and
keep going, man.
Feel free to call Freeman.
That's right. Complain to Freeman.
So,
guys are great.
I love that. So one of your life purposes is to uplift and to communicate conscious values and expand consciousness through media.
Yes.
And what is your other top two life missions?
Wow. To raise a happy child.
Beautiful.
Which is...
Well, you're well on your way. You've done that.
Well, it also raises a happy you. I mean, when you start to, your child shows the mirror of all of your past programming, and you get to...
And future possibility.
Right. Yeah. So that is one. But it's also to... Here's the big, huge, gigantic dream, is... I had this vision once, and it's so beautiful, about and this is in oddly in a past life regression that I went through. In my past life regression, I went into the future because all time is simultaneous, and I envisioned this beautiful, incredible world where we all were connected consciously, telepathically, on the same page with the uplifting and upleveling of humanity through our earth, through our conversations, through play, through entertainment, through fun, through action. And it was like this giant bubble, and it was like the size of the earth, but it was clear, and it was spacious, and there were different pods everywhere that there were dwellings and so forth. But it was really this global collective consciousness that connected everyone and everything.
I'm in.
Yes.
When's the boat leaving?
Seriously, I know, but it was.
I think we
gotta build it first.
I think we're sailing into port.
Yeah.
I feel it.
I think that what you're talking about is something. So I talk in terms of my own work about a quality-based vision. So in my life experience, I have moments where something occurred that was like home to me, either in terms of connection or creative expression, but I didn't know until I was there. But I have enough hints of it that I actually know the qualities in the experience that's ultimately fulfilling for me, and the quality of relating that I want more of, yeah?
So I'm going to ask you both a question about that point.
Okay, go ahead.
So the experience of quality.
Yeah.
Where do you experience that? First, I'll ask Lisa. How do you know you're having an experience of quality? Where do you experience that?
It is a satisfaction where you want for nothing else.
Nice.
And is that a concept, or is that a feeling?
It's a feeling.
So it's a being state.
It's a being, and it's a peacefulness where you don't want anything other than that.
So Freeman,
I'm going with Lisa.
You're going with Lisa. So to me, to thread back to the environments that we create for each other and for our children, this is a being state inside of which all doings being equal.
I know. I read the book.
I didn't actually put that in the big book.
Oh, come on. Your whole book is about this.
But inside our last 5 years on this show has been about this.
That's right.
Inside that mood, all the doings all the stuff that we undertake, otherwise it's pretty much the same. What makes it different, what makes it more or less effective, is the being state, and the quality that we're talking about now. That is what gets transferred to our children and to our colleagues and to our friends and to our families and to our communities, to our world, more impactfully than the doing.
And I think it ultimately is going to be an awareness game. Yeah. Is to the degree we're aware. Hey, speaking of awareness, we have to let you go, but before we do, we want to make our audience aware
of the Aware
Lisa
Show,
Gar, of what you're up to, where they can get the book, and all the things that you
where they can tune in
presently doing.
Oh yes, wow! It's over. My gosh, I miss you. Okay, so here's
we're going to schedule you again.
Yeah, and next time you got to come in
studio.
That was so fast. Okay,
so you can sit in our new leather chair.
Yeah, we do have a new chair.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah.
Here's what I did is I recorded a series of visualization processes that, first of all, there's 2 that are in the book, and I wanted to make the book interactive, so there's QR codes in the book that you can just scan your phone over or enter in a URL, and you can go to a 15-minute visualization process where I take you to this remembering your future process. And what it does is it takes you to an immersion sense of your goal and your dream realized. And what it does is it builds all those great neural bundles that we talked about at the beginning of the show, so that you start to rewire the brain into the new state of being as if it has already occurred. And that becomes the remembering your future, so that when you get there faster, and also it's very familiar when you get there and you move on from there. So there's also other processes that I did around parenting and relationship, and that's all found at the website, which is The Aware Show. That's TheAwareshow.com/guide, GUIDE. And there's about 7 other visualization processes that I just take people through, that is to allow the brain to go into that space of suspended belief, of limitless potential, where all things are possible. And that's where I love taking people on that journey, and it's one of the gifts that I have just been given and growing with and loving helping people with. So that's that's what that is, and that's where people can find all things aware.
Perfect.
On that website.
And we, of course, will put this also on the Cutting Edge Consciousness website. Lisa, thank you so much for hanging with us.
It's a pleasure. I just love having you with us. So till next time.
And good luck and congratulations on everything to both of you. And I am so proud and happy with you, and I want to just stay on the journey with you, okay?
You're in. And for those of you listening, we invite you to stay in through the commercials, because we'll be back on this side to wrap things up here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. So Freeman Michaels here with Barnet Bain. A little different than we usually do it. We're actually picking this up as a separate segment. We ran out of time in the studio, had a little technical difficulties, so we are actually calling in today to pick up this segment. But this is the back end, the final segment of the show we did with Lisa Gar, which I loved.
Yeah, it was a great show. I also love, Freeman, how beautifully you showed your long division there. Because if it was up to me, this would be a 20-minute explanation to our listeners.
Well, I'm working on brevity. It's not like it's easy for me, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, I think you're the wizard at it. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's
so
great.
If you ever take up coaching brevity, then sign me up.
That's right. Well, I'm working on being brevity. So let's track back to the conversation we had with Lisa. I'll tell you what struck me. What's that?
Briefly. Let's track back briefly.
Yeah, briefly.
In the interest of brevity, we're going to briefly track.
Yeah, that's the theme. What I think we were onto, the scent of, was, this whole language around conscious parenting. Conscious being will take care of your conscious parenting. I don't think, to reference the conversation, that there are, 3 tools or 9 keys. I mean, again, as you said in the conversation, Barnett, that there is a step in learning some tools which is required, but there becomes a point where if you're too tied to the tools, it actually defeats your purpose, right?
Precisely, absolutely.
So this idea of, if you really want to be a great parent, consider who you're being in the world, and that becomes the space wherein your kids have more and more permission to be who they are, which is ultimately what we want.
I think that's true. I mean, your kids, they not only look for how you're modeling behaviors, so they take my advice, I'm not using it, paradigm of parenting is not terribly effective. They not only look for how you're showing up and how you're conducting yourself, but they also experience, without words, they experience the environments that we create, the state that we create, simply out of our being. And so one of the most profound wisdoms that I've received, most lately on our show with Shefali, Dr. Shefali Tsabari, who advised us that maybe one of the most powerful expressions of being a parent that we could investigate is by working on ourselves.
100%.
The more you look at yourself, the more that I'm attuned to who I am and how I show up and what motivates me and what are my agendas and what are my unadmitted scripts and patterns and behaviors. The more that I take responsibility for myself, the better able the people in my environment, my kids, are able to see themselves, and we become different in that context.
Yeah, this is really around the understanding that we're projecting onto our kids, and an awareness, going back to the conversation with Lisa, an awareness that we're doing that is really step one, right? We're not denying that that's what we do, but our aspiration is not to be projecting who our children have to be. In fact, we're recovering from all those projections that were laid on us about who we were, who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to feel and what works to keep everyone happy around us.
If I had heard, let me be even more precise, if I had had the presence of a consciousness to make a space for my child, my daughter, but very, very early, if I could have lived into the ownership that I myself am lovable and special, and that it is not what I do, but who I am that is lovable. If I really understood that about myself, I would better be able to create an environment in which she could understand that about herself. Can you imagine what you would be like, Freeman, if you had heard as a boy that I love you and I give you permission to be different from me, to have different beliefs, to have different attitudes, to have different gender preferences, to have different spiritual or religious preferences, different political preferences. I love you, and I give you permission to be different from me.
So you have. I mean, this is the big thing with your daughter is that, look, one of the things I love, and this has come up because she's okay with it, is you've been open about the fact that she's adopted. Yeah. And you and Sandy both embraced her having a relationship with her birth mother, and now her birth father, and Sandy's even going to meet the birth father. I mean, one of the things that strikes me about Sophie, really strikes me, is that she's in her experience, I'm going to say fully. It doesn't, we want to wrap our kids up in little packages, not because we're bad people. It's just we want to protect them. It's a kind of inclination we have, yeah? But without the awareness that is something that needs to be carefully balanced with an understanding that they have their own process and respecting the dignity of their process, the bumpiness of their process.
Yeah. I mean, people come into the world with their own agendas.
Yes.
And they come in with their own energies, and they come in with their own potential. And to the extent that we, as parents, as community, can create environments that allow people to flourish in their own right and not abandon themselves or somehow relinquish their essential nature in order to conform to an outside expectation or to do so in order to belong, that's going to happen anyway. But to the degree that I think that we can mitigate it and meet people where they are, whether it's friends or children, I just want to be that person. I want to be somebody that allows another person to become the most of who they already are, and
that is
not
beautiful.
Surrender themselves to what I want them to be. And that's not always easy because when your kid goes a little too far out of your comfort zone, I can tell you from firsthand experience, it is triggering.
It is. But here's again what we go back to from the show. It's an aspiration. And for me, look, what you just said, Barnett, is here's what I'm aspiring to, and it's hard. That, to me, is far more generous than an expert on conscious parenting telling us the 7 keys or the 5 rules or again, I don't want to diminish the people who are doing the parenting work. We have some wonderful friends who do beautiful work, and it's great. Yeah. But I'm just saying that this conversation, what we're doing right now, where there's an aspiration to support the essential, process that these beings, our children, have come to experience, to manifest. And our job is just to create a big enough container so they can do it in the most loving and gracious way. And darn it, it's hard. That's a really generous thing. Whereas I get really personally kind of I don't know what the word is, bothered. I don't know if that's exactly right, because it's fine. Again, you made the point that it's developmental, but I don't think parenting is 3 keys or 7 steps. I think it's a huge aspiration to be a conscious parent, to really allow your kids to be who they are, and it's not something you do because it's something you do constantly.
Yes, I think you're absolutely spot on. I completely agree. There's a secret sauce to it, in my view. In my own experience, I've discovered there's a secret sauce. I cannot love my child any more than I love myself.
Yeah.
So I cannot give my child any more permission to individuate and become her full being any more than I recognize the limitations to my own being.
And what strikes me about Sophie, and I said this to you when we were at coffee yesterday, I said it was so great to see your daughter on Sunday, because I saw her on Sunday and I had a brief conversation with her. What strikes me about her is how much she is in her experience as a human being. There's an authenticity in Sophie that is, for me, striking. I don't know many people who I've had contact with in my life who have that level of, and maybe it's my relationship with her, but that level of authenticity and almost transparency. Like what you see is what you get. She's so able to be where she's at in her life. It's remarkable. I mean, she's 6 or whatever years old she is, and she's just real.
Yeah. You're speaking to something that I experience constantly. I am blown away by her presence and by her authenticity. It's powerful. And sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes it triggers me. It triggers me because that level of transparency and authenticity, occasionally it will cause, it brings up things in other people that, she's so frank about her own experience that it brings up judgments from other people.
It does.
And I think, oh God, she's going to go through something. And there's my tendency to want to do agency and to take responsibility for another person's life and protect. And I still feel that impulse, and it's unhealthy. I need to be able to. I have to check my impulse. Not that I could do anything about it anyway. She's a 27-year-old woman. But, I want to say to her sometimes, you can be a little less candid. And I won't do it, but my inclination is to want to do it. It's uncomfortable to me because that level of transparency brings with it its own set of challenges.
It does.
They are challenges that, in many ways, she is better equipped to handle. Well, she is better equipped to handle them than I can't handle her challenges. But I can't handle challenges in my own life that are the equivalent. She's incredibly powerful woman. There's another piece to this. You have young children, so you're a few years away from experiencing this. But as a parent of a 27-year-old woman, I could tell you that there was a moment when I realized, when I had the experience of her awareness and her presence superseding mine. And as I speak it, I'm choked up right now. There comes a moment when you realize this little person that you raised is so powerful that she is firing on more cylinders. I'm not saying that across the board, but there are so many areas in which she is firing on more cylinders than I am. There are so many areas, and more she begins to teach me. And I'm not saying that in a precious way. More and more, I have to redefine my relationship with her, where I realize, yes, I'm the father, but I am being led now in so many areas. You know, on the one, and sometimes it's triggering because it you know, it pushes you into a humility that, frankly, I'm not always ready for. I'm not always ready to redefine the relationship. I'm not always so ready for it. But the easy one is she's so knowledgeable. You know, she's the lead therapist at a quite a large treatment center for teens and adolescents, and now she's the lead therapist. I think they have for all 3 of their facilities. And she is so knowledgeable about the psychologies of these things and the various therapeutic models. She is so. It's astonishing. It's astonishing. So at that level, it's amazing to be taught in that way. And that's in some ways easier to handle than the sophistication of pure consciousness, of pure depth awareness. You know, that's not just the transference of knowledge, but I'm talking about wisdom. I'm making the distinction. When she shows up in that authenticity that you're speaking about, that's something that I am now learning from. I don't want to go on and on about this, but it's a big point.
Well, you can't because we've run out of time.
Oh, are we finished?
Yeah, but here's the good news. Here's the good news. We'll be back again. Hey, listen, for those of you listening,
next time. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah, for those of you listening, we want to invite you to keep tuning in and keep coming back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Thanks for listening.